So I started looking at the Piper Malibu, and then I started looking at the Piper Matrix because it sure looked to me like a Piper Matrix. I'm used to flying below 10,000 feet. It's not pressurized. It's cheaper, but it's a great airplane. It looks like it'll go fast. And that's when I started. I started looking around for that airplane. I started looking at different things. Next thing you know, I started looking at different people who to talk to that can help me with this because I realized I'm not smart enough to understand all the H's to it. And that's when I saw this thing called Wild Blue and a guy named Chris Kirk.
You're listening to the Wild Blue Podcast, where my co-host and good friend Todd Minton and I shoot the breeze with other aviation professionals. We cover topics important to aircraft owners and generally just have some good fun bantering about the ins and outs of all things general aviation. I'm Chris Kirk, and this week I'm flying solo while interviewing Wild Blue client Jim Myles about his PA46 purchase and ownership experience. If you'd rather see this conversation on video, head over to our YouTube channel, which is at FlyWildBlue. Hi, this is Chris Kirk with the Wild Blue Podcast. Welcome and thanks for listening. And just a quick plug in there for us. If you haven't already subscribed or shared our podcast, please do. We'd love to have you join our listening group. And by all means, if you have anything you'd like to send us, topics or questions or ideas, my email is Chris, CHRIS, @flywildblue.com. So we'll get right into it. Right here, we're talking with Jim Myles this morning, and Jim is a Wild Blue client and I think he's got a very fascinating story, both his background and his business and what he flies. And so I thought, gosh, this would be a great time to talk with Jim, and maybe he can shed some light on people for people who are thinking about getting into airplane ownership, or, how they integrate it with their business, or, maybe just life philosophies. I don't know, Jim. So go ahead. Let me introduce you. I just did. And so tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. Aviation brings you into a lot of different places. And the thing that I really like about it is the opportunity to meet new people, and especially with people that have impacted my life the way that you have, just by exposing me or reacquainting me with the private aviation enterprise, if you will, and how to best do what I did, which was buy an airplane and that I wanted for my family. So a little bit about myself. Born in Aiken, South Carolina. Was raised in Nashville, Tennessee, and decided that I'm so old that my they had something called the draft and the draft lottery back in 1970, 74, 73, and basically they had ping pong balls. Pull out your date, and if you're probably in the top 100 dates that they first pull out, you'll get drafted to go into the service. And so my number was 32, and all of a sudden I decided that maybe I want to learn a little more about the military. Next thing you know, at Middle Tennessee State University, and I decided to go into the Army as an officer. And 37 years later, I got out of the Army. All I want to do is fly for the airlines, much like you, Chris. But somewhere in those first 4 years of learning how to fly a helicopter, I fell in love with soldiers. And so that was a lifelong journey of nothing but 21 moves. My wife way up, and I can't even tell you the number of places where we actually were, but great opportunity and changed our life. And so in that process was very fortunate to fly Beech King Airs I got about 1,200 hours in the King Air, and also a whole bunch of time in special operations, helicopters, Little Birds, Blackhawks, and conventional Army aviation. So flying was just a life, has always been a love of it. And so I don't know how far you want me to go with this, but that's kind of my background. Married, have one son, 2 grandchildren, have got a dog somewhere in the process. We have this thing in the Army called an order of merit list, where they rank order people. And when we had the grandchildren, I dropped two space spots for each one. My wife keeps track of the OML list, and now we got a dog, and now I dropped 2 more spots, and I think that's unfair. But there's no way I can argue with her. And so if I can just stay in the single digits in the order of merit list, Grandpa will be just fine. So that's us.
Yeah, that's great. So you went to Middle Tennessee State. Did you know how to fly before you went into the Army?
I did not know how to fly until I said I was going to go into the Army. Middle Tennessee State had a program that allowed you to get 40 hours of flying, and you would then and I loved flight school. I loved aviator glasses. That's what I wanted. I wanted to wear those cool sunglasses. So I got 40 hours of flying, and I'll tell you, having flown just that Cessna 152 for the short period of time and getting my private pilot's license helped me through flight school. I finished in the top 10% of my class, not because I was smart. It's just I had the experience and that it gave me. So I was very blessed to be able to do that before I went in.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice even now, because I'm always telling guys, I'm like, look, if you can at least go out and solo before you go to military pilot training, because I was an instructor in the Air Force for a number of years. You can really tell for that, just that maybe later in the program it doesn't help you a lot, but early on I think it does. That's good advice. But you went to helicopter training though. You went to helicopter school.
Yes.
And were you at the time, were you a warrant officer, or were you a commissioned officer, or how did that work?
I was a commissioned officer, lieutenant, and the way the Army worked back then, we didn't even have an Army aviation branch, like branch of service, like infantry and artillery and all that. We didn't have a branch, so I came in as a lieutenant and served as an infantry officer for the first few years before I was able to go to flight school, and and I'll tell you an interesting story about it. When I was in the infantry, our first assignment was at Fort Campbell, and back then we had jungle school, and so our unit went down to jungle school, and I remember flying or going through the jungle in Panama, and a helicopter was supposed to pick us up to fly us somewhere. And we were just going through triple canopy jungle, and we were rotating through trying to cut all the underbrush that we had to go through to get to the LZ. And we were 20 minutes late. I heard the helicopter fly over, and we were trying like heck to get there. And as soon as we got to the helicopter, the pilot, the warrant officer goes like this. So they gave me a headset, put it on. And that warrant officer jumped on me and said, "Do you realize I've burned 50 more gallons of gas, and you're 20 minutes late? I should have left you." And that burned a hole in me. And I'm a lieutenant. I didn't know enough to push back on him. And so that just burned a hole in me. And like, he has no idea what I was doing. We're all sweating. We're just incredible that we even made it this time. So fast forward, I go to flight school, get assigned to Panama. Actually, that's another story. But I go to flight school, and that colored my mind that aviation, in particular helicopters, are all about supporting the guy in the back. It's all about making a difference in who they are. And so every unit I would go to, I would pull all the warrant officers together, all the pilots together, and I would say, "Let me tell you a story." And it was about taking care of the kids in the back. And because our only existence is to do the mission and to take care of them in the back. And it's something that always stayed with me. And, it's interesting. I'm into aviation, doing private. We have our own airplane I use for business, and it's still true. Whoever I fly in the back or wherever I'm going, it's about supporting the mission and always making sure that what you're doing is using aviation to further another mission that you're trying to do. And those are always the best flights. Training flights are great, but when you're doing it to serve another purpose, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so did you stay active in Army aviation your entire career?
I did. I was very fortunate to do it, to stay in. I think I was out of 37 years, 32, 33 of them were in actual aviation units. I ended up, I mean, the Army had a sense of humor. We were pretty big, so I ended up being a major general when I retired. I was able to command an aviation battalion, which is as lieutenant colonel, which is about 1,400 soldiers. A brigade was a little bit bigger, about 2,500 in Korea. Commanded the battalion in Fort Hood, Texas, now Fort Cavazos. Korea was the brigade, and then I ended up was the senior tester for the Army. I commanded a place called ATEC, Army Test Evaluation Command, during after 9/11, and I did that for rapid testing, getting stuff out the field to our soldiers for not just aviation but ground stuff, and then ended up going to a place called AMCOM, Aviation Missile Command, here in Huntsville, Alabama, at Redstone Arsenal. We retired out of there, and this was about getting all logistics, being responsible for logistics and readiness of all aviation and missiles in the Army. And so, but all of that had something to do with aviation. Just like in Test Evaluation Command, wherever I'd go, we had helicopters, and I would always, as soon as I'd get there, I'd tell the pilots, you know the deal, you got the radios, I'm flying. That's what we're going to do. And so always stayed in aviation, and it was very, very good. And fortunately, I was able to get a airline transport pilot license when I was flying King Airs in one of my assignments, which I was very blessed to be able to do that, and which has helped me later on in life.
So tell me about that transition. You went from helicopters to fixed wing. How does the Army do that? Is there an additional training program you had to go through? And because it sounds like you even went back to rotary wing after fixed wing, right? You transitioned back and forth.
I was very, very fortunate. In flight school, I actually went to fixed wing. They taught me rotary wing, fly helicopters, and then even before I left Fort Rucker, now it's called Fort Novacell, they gave me a transition because they were going to put me in an assignment. It's all about where you're going to be assigned, and the place that they wanted to send me to was Panama, and they told me I was going to be flying around to all the capitals in South America, and so they gave me a fixed wing transition prior to leaving Fort Rucker then, and it's what you do is you start out in a Beechcraft Baron, and you fly that airplane and get current and get your fixed wing license, if you will, and then they would send you, if you're back then, they'd send you to the Beechcraft to get a ground school, and then you'd come back and you'd learn to fly a C-12 and that's what I did. So before I ever left flight school, I had the transition for a Beech King Air. Now, when I went to Panama, I didn't even get close to the King Airs. I was a maintenance officer by trade, by my military occupational specialty. So I ended up going to work in the helicopter maintenance unit, which was fascinating, which I loved doing. And I stayed in helicopters until I had one assignment to go to MacDill Air Force Base, and we were in charge of all the providing fixed wing support to all the large training exercises were done in South America and up in Alaska. And so it was nothing to get in a King Air and fly down to Panama, fly down to Costa Rica, and also to up to Alaska for all the brim frost, which is the large exercises in the middle of the winter, which was a great experience flying King Airs all the way up to Alaska. It was great.
So you in maintenance, were you actually turning wrenches?
I would do over the shoulder. I was in charge of the soldiers that did all that, but I still had to maintain the capability, not to the point of being an A&P level, but it's just having to maintain situational awareness to make sure that I knew what what our soldiers were doing. There's something we always say: you have to be tactically and technically proficient to lead soldiers. So what you had to do is you had to be smart enough to understand what they're doing. And so you would definitely get involved, but not as a chief technician, but as someone who's leading the soldiers.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, that was my next question, is whether you ended up getting an A&P out of that or not. But yeah, that's fascinating. So you spent all that time, you moved 21 years. During all your time on active duty, were you at all involved in general aviation, or did that come later?
I was involved in general aviation. We had in fact, here at Huntsville in Redstone is the last flying club that the Army actually allows to happen, and it's through morale, welfare, and recreation. It's an extra duty. The Army used to have flying clubs, just like the Air Force. I'm sure you remember that. Have T-41s and T-42s. With T-41s, the old Cessna 172 with a 200 horsepower engine in it, and then you had T-42s, which was the Beech Baron, and then they started putting additional civilian airplanes in there. But what you could do is you could join the club, and the airplanes would be kept out on the at the military installations, and that's what you'd be able to do is you'd be able to rent them for $15 an hour, and you can fly the airplanes and go anywhere you wanted to. You had to fly. You had to have a civilian license, and you had to be current. But obviously, the Army and the Air Force as well would always make you do more regulations. You had to go to do multiple things to make sure that you're current and trained. But it was a great thing to still fly and do commercial. So if you go on your leave or vacation, you could actually take that airplane and go somewhere. And we would try to do that as much as we could.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing to have available to you. We never did have any aero clubs available where I was, but I know a lot. But that's why probably one of the reasons I ended up buying an airplane in my early 20s. Because I wanted to have something to fly. Yeah. Wow. So explain a little bit then from your transition, if you would, from the military to what you're doing now, and maybe a little background on what you're involved with.
Okay. Yeah. When I retired, we retired out of here at Redstone in 2011. After all that time, I'm from Nashville. My wife is from Chattanooga, so this is a natural thing where Huntsville and Redstone Arsenal is. So we felt like we were home, and so we retired out of here. My wife showed that she really still loved me because we actually got a house on the golf course. I love to play golf. But I still wanted to stay close to the Army, and so I ended up working for a company called DynCorp, and I ran their aviation maintenance business. And there was a lot of, when you're doing combat ops, Army soldiers, just like the Air Force, you're only authorized a certain number of people. It's based on the number of hours you're going to fly and that kind of stuff. Well, when you're doing combat ops, you're going to fly, like we were flying, instead of flying 15 hours per aircraft per month, which is what the Army standard usually was, we were flying in some cases, and the fleets were flying 100 hours a month instead of 15. So wow. Some that maintenance in that maintenance usually would go to the civilian contractors, and that we would put people in Afghanistan, Colombia for the counter drug mission. And so I ran their business. This is a pretty big business there. We were bringing in about $1 billion a year because of the op tempo that was required. We were about in 35 different countries, and did that for about 5 years. Then my wife and I had the talk that you need to be thinking about, slowing down. And she's absolutely right. So I started consulting. And when I started to consult, that's when I found I had enough time. I had not flown in 6-7 years, and I really wanted to get back into flying. And so I started joined the local flying clubs and started flying. But the issues that I came up with was that the airplanes that I wanted to fly, sometimes they weren't available, and we know that. Or in some cases, the airplanes I would fly, I didn't like the way they were maintained, and I didn't know what you didn't know until you actually got in the airplane. You started to pre-flight it. You would start asking some of the basic questions. When's the last time has it had an annual? When it did, what about this, and what about this? What about the gear? You just walk around and look at it, and you'd see some squawks, and you get a feel for it, and you go, I'm not. It's not that I don't think the aircraft is airworthy. I'm not sure. It's predictable enough to be able to go. And quite frankly, most of my issues were involved around I wanted to go somewhere to take the family for the weekend, or I wanted to go somewhere else, and the airplane wasn't available. So even though I was flying Cherokee 6s, and I eventually I found a guy that and it's hard to find owners that will allow you to fly their airplane, and I don't blame them. I wish that they would back when I didn't own an airplane. Now that I own an airplane, yeah, I get it entirely.
Right. Yeah.
You spend a lot of time maintaining that airplane, and if somebody's going to cause an accident or cause an incident or do something or break the airplane, I want it to be me. I don't want it to be somebody else. And it's pride of ownership. And so I did that for about 2 years, and that's when I ran across an idea that said, I think I want to get an airplane, a 6-seater. I want to take the family out. We had grandchildren then. And so I didn't know what to do on how to buy an airplane. I just knew that I wanted to get an airplane.
And so what year was this around that you were starting to get into that mode of thinking?
Right before COVID hit.
Okay.
But I didn't know. That's when I started looking. And I was flying a Piper Saratoga, and I liked that airplane. But I started thinking about, hey, I got the grandkids. I want to be able to fly to St. Louis. I'm a Cardinals fan. I want to watch them, and I'd like to be able to do something like that, or I'd like to go to the beach or go golf or whatever. And so that's when I started looking at, well, what's out there that's even bigger, and can I afford it, and what's there. And so I started looking at the Piper Malibu, and then I started looking at the Piper Matrix, because it sure looked to me like a Piper Matrix. I'm used to flying below 10,000 feet. It's not pressurized. It's cheaper, but it's a great airplane. It looks like it'll go fast. And that's when I started looking around for that airplane. I started looking at different things. Next thing you know, I started looking at different people who to talk to that can help me with this, because I realized I'm not smart enough to understand all the eaches to it. And that's when I saw this thing called Wild Blue and a guy named Chris Kirk. And we had some great conversations about what do you want to buy? What do you want to do with it? This is the thing that you asked so well. I thought that was great. Hey, what do you want to do with it? And I started talking about it. And then you said the thing that I thought was brilliant, which was, you can get you can buy an airplane that'll meet 99% of your missions that you want to do. But if you take a look at the number of missions you're actually going to do, or the flights you're going to do, you'll probably be doing 80 or 90% of the time, not the 99th percentile. You may come up with a different solution. Because what I wanted was to be able to take 6 people and go somewhere. But if I wanted to do everything that on the 99th percentile, to fly halfway across the country without refueling or somewhere else, I was finding that I ended up having to get into a twin or a King Air or something like that, when in fact, 80 to 90% of my missions that I'm going to do all the time, or the flights, can be met with that Piper Malibu or the Matrix. Then we got into a discussion about pressurized versus non-pressurized. And even though I really liked that Matrix, all of a sudden I started remembering, and this is the beauty about the guidance that you gave me about, have you thought about what the amount of times you can fly with the weather that is at 10,000 feet versus the fact that if you go up to 20,000 feet, you might find that that you can get to where you want to go more often. And then we started looking at the difference in the prices, and that's what you helped me through. And it became clear the Piper Malibu Mirage is what I wanted, what I needed best for the Myles family that we wanted to do, because I wanted to support my emerging consulting job, because what I ended up doing was, in my job was, after I left DynCorp, I now knew a lot about acquisition from the military side. Then I saw it from the contractor side. And so I could see both sides. And this was about helping the Army, the military industrial complex, helping contractors understand what the Army wants, because sometimes the Army says they want something that's not quite, doesn't quite come out in the way it's written. So being able to help communicate and bring people together, it was one of the strengths that I wanted to be able to take advantage of, and that's what I did. But and aviation was a piece of it. So knowing that I may find that there's 4 or 5 people I want to go somewhere with, then that Piper Malibu became the right one. And I'll tell you, it's been a life changer in terms of quality of life. That airplane has been, because if I want to go somewhere, that airplane, the airplane's available. And it's like when our granddaughter turned 18, we told her, we told our son and his wife, we're going to kidnap the granddaughter for a week. We got her. She's ours. So we turned to her and said, where do you want to go? We'll take you anywhere you want to go. She said, Grandpa, I want to put my feet in the Pacific Ocean. I said, done. So we put that airplane together. We put the trip together and took our granddaughter and her best friend out and flew to San Diego via the Grand Canyon, Sedona, which is spectacular. Just a flight along the coast. And we just had one of the greatest experiences taking her out there. And unlike spousal points that you get when you do something well for your spouse that goes away after 3 hours, grandchildren points stay with you, and they continue to grow exponentially for years. And it's been wonderful. So it's provided some wonderful experiences that's allowed you to go do some things that you probably couldn't have done otherwise.
Sure. Yeah. And that airplane is so super capable that you can do a lot of that stuff. It's great to hear that you're sharing it with family, and, the kids get to see it. That's what it's all about. I love that. How much are you using it for, percentage wise, for personal use versus business use?
I used to fly it. I'm averaging about 100 hours a year on it. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. I probably, to break out, is about 10% business, and the rest of it's just personal.
Wow.
Grandson just turned 18. He wanted to go play golf. So next thing you know, we're at Pinehurst and TPC Sawgrass and a few other things, and that was a great experience. But it works out that way. And business is really, really been unique and positive, because if COVID hadn't hit, it probably would have been a 50-50 split. But because of COVID, now being able to do what we're doing here, podcasts, being able to link up digitally and distribute it like you do now, you don't have to go to visit the locations as much, because you can do it like I'm doing now. However, just like I'm supporting a company out of Iowa, I still go up there. I'll still go up there twice a year. But if we hadn't been doing what we're doing now, distributed like this with video teleconferences, I'd be going up there 5-6 times a year. Same thing with Washington, D.C. I've gone up there and gone to Washington, but it's more the exception than the rule. And going to visit companies in North Carolina is one that's close, and it's a great airplane to allow you to go when you want to go, not when the airlines have to. Just like, for instance, I took a commercial flight to go pick up my airplane because the person that does my annual inspection is out of Olathe, Kansas, as you know, Mead Aviation. And I go there every year. It took me 9 hours to take a commercial flight to go to Kansas City to pick up the airplane. And it took me 2.5 hours to get home. And in my own airplane, flying back here to Huntsville. And the time savings is really quite remarkable, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. And you think about the enjoyment factor. I mean, how often do you wish that, you did the airline thing and you're like, oh man, I wish I could have just taken my plane. Now, the other way is not necessarily true. You don't necessarily want to find yourself in your own airplane going, oh, I should have, or wish I would have taken the airlines. Occasionally we'll have flights like that. But so you got your Mirage. Now, if I remember right, when we first started talking, you did start off kind of with a Saratoga. We were thinking about it. We quickly got past that. Went to talking about the Mirage, or the Matrix, and then the Mirage. So obviously a little bit of a different airplane, a little bit of a different mission, different costs. So people that are listening and are looking at getting into a PA46, can you share some just rough numbers? What, if you're flying that airplane 100 hours a year, so not including any upgrades or anything like that, but just basic operational costs, including fuel and stuff like that. Have you worked that out to, like, on an hourly basis, what you figure it costs you on that airplane?
Yeah, I've worked my way through it a little bit, and it's episodic. It's okay until you replace 2 alternators in 1 year. The cost goes up. The next year you don't replace anything, and it goes down. I think the number is around $450 an hour. Now that includes insurance, and insurance for me, because of my age, is a lot more expensive than most people think. But it is what it is. In fact, my age group, 65 to 75, has the best accident rate than any other age group. However, what the insurance guys told me, Tom Hagee, you know him well, from the wings, and he said, the good news is you guys have the lowest accident rate. The bad news is when you crash your airplanes, it's expensive. You're more expensive than anybody else. Okay, I got it. So, but insurance is the big cost, and the fuel is what it is. I'll tell you, I'm usually at 16 to 17 gallons an hour, and I'm doing 180 knots consistently. And that's flying the airplane at cruise. And the way I say it's consistently, when I'm into the wind, I'm a lot less, but I'm at lower altitudes. When the winds are in my favor, I'm at 23,000 feet or 22,000 feet, and that difference is incredible. Just like this, like Kansas City, it was 2 hours and 33 minutes yesterday, and it was not a great tailwind. It was 20 knots, 15 knots, a little less than I would have liked to, but you get 100, you can plan on 180 knots for a round trip. It's just that way. And to get that range, that speed at that cost, at that fuel cost, which is really, really remarkable, is really pretty good. Yeah.
And given the how you operate your airplane and just knowing you, and I think that's actually a pretty that number came in a little lower per hour than I would have thought. I know Meade's not cheap, but that's where the airplane should be going. Because I figure even on my Saratoga, I'm running right around those numbers. I know the last couple of years have been super expensive with it, but I'm running 20 knots, 25 knots, generally slower than you are. And of course, I'm not de-iced either. But you brought up something on the getting into the airplane. I did want to speak to just real quick, and that's for somebody that's looking at these. There are 2 things that I try to find out immediately before we ever go any further. And number 1, honestly, is how tall are you? How big are you? Because guys will get in the airplane, and I think, Jim, you're a little taller than I am. Now, I'm 6'1". How tall are you?
You and I are about the same, and I used to be 6'1.5" or 6'2", but age is taking care of that.
It's not getting any taller.
Yeah.
But so you're kind of right there, and that's what I tell folks is that you get much taller than 6'1", depending on how you're built and whether or not the seats are the seats that go up and down. You may not like the front end of that airplane. I've had guys that were 6'4", they go see it, they were just all excited, and they get up there and like, oh, this is not going to work. And then the other thing, of course, is insurance, and people are often somewhat shocked at the cost. And I think that the Mirage has a little bit, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but the Mirage has a little bit of a mystique to it. It just looks fast out there on the ramp. It's a sizable airplane. It's a good looking airplane. You got the stairs. I mean, it's just a nice, Piper did a great job when they built that clean sheet design back in the 80s. But I think it has an allure to people that really just don't belong in that airplane. And so they have these aspirations. I'll get calls from guys all the time, and what are you flying now? Well, I'm flying a Cherokee 180, and you want to jump into a Mirage. You have got to talk to insurance first, because first of all, I don't even think we should even be talking about it, but you need to get a grip on what that's going to be. And so you brought up a good point there.
To that point, where you come from matters, and like from a King Air, stepping down, I feel like I stepped down to a Piper Matrix, but every system that I had to manage in the King Air, you got the same system: pressurization, the landing gear, being able to stay up with the speed of an airplane. Always trying to stay ahead of it is important. The emergency procedures for flying at altitude, you got to be on it. You need to. And so when you're moving up, go a step from a Saratoga up to a Matrix. Yeah, that makes sense. But you got to. But there's things you have to learn, and it's very, very important. And to your point about the cockpit, you're right. It's small. I would say if you're 220 pounds or higher, that's a problem. Or if you're, like you said, 6'4", 6'3", it becomes a problem. It is. And it's just something you got to go sit in and say, can I sit there for 3 hours? It's not just
Right.
it's not going to fit, or can I land it? You also got to sit there without moving a lot. Unless you're single pilot. If you're single pilot, my right leg can go across that other side really well.
Right.
But,
yep.
Yeah, but it's something that's not for everybody, and for sure it is expensive. I hear other people that say the cost is a little higher, and I think I may have gotten lucky with a good airplane, and that engine is rock solid. I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, that's great. That's good to hear. And I guess maybe not the flip side, but the other part of the equation is the back end of that airplane is just very roomy. You got a lot of leg room. And I think between my airplane and your airplane, I haven't ever measured it, but I'm guessing there's probably close to a foot extra space between those seats. Yeah, and it's just a very comfortable airplane in the back for the people that are back there.
It's terrific. It's good. Now, if you're gonna put 4 adults in there, you better pay attention to the amount of fuel you got, what your weight and balance is, or else the airplane will take you to the scene of the accident if you're not careful.
Right.
But if you want, like with 3 people in it, you can go as far as you want. When my granddaughter went out there, we took 3 people plus, I don't know how many pillows and blankets they brought with them, but it's a lot. So got to do, and you take 8 girls out.
Yeah. Is there anything about your ownership experience that surprised you?
Surprised me. Cost of hangars nowadays is phenomenal. And getting access to hangars is that's a challenge. I keep one. I still keep mine 35 miles away, but I won't change no matter what because of the FBO. I mean, I show up, they have I give them the keys to the car. They take the airplane's already pulled out. They put the car in the hangar, and vice versa. When I land, we swap and it's done. And So that, and it's only like $230 a month for hangar, which is phenomenally low. But up here in Huntsville, it's not that. So that was a surprise. And I can tell you, I think that's about the only one. But a lot of the risk was mitigated. And I'm throwing rose petals at you, and I know this is probably not why you wanted to do it, but a lot of it was mitigated by having someone like you, being able to have someone that you can walk through the experience with, that can guide you on the decisions you want to make. Because there's so many things you don't know what you don't know when you're buying an airplane, and you know what the issues are, and you brought those up, and so you gave me options on insurance companies, but you said, here's some of the ones that I with my airplane I trust implicitly, and you gave me one in particular with Tom Hagee and Wings Insurance, and I'm using them, and they're phenomenal. You gave me, when we bought the airplane, I bought it from you, but it had a heritage with Meade Aviation, and the guy that owns Meade Aviation obviously is Kevin Meade, who I would say is the premier expert when it comes to maintenance on the Piper Malibu. I'm saying it because you said it, and what you said was 100% correct. He's just phenomenal, and so I bought it. And so where do I get my annual inspection done? I get it at Meade Aviation. And not only am I confident that the airplane is being maintained at the highest levels possible, it also helps in the resale of the airplane.
Yeah, that is so critical on that PA46 too. It's so critical.
Yeah, it is. And so the point is, I could have learned a lot more by hitting my head on 2x4s, and I already did enough of that in the Army. And so you helped me, and I would advise everybody, if you're going to buy a plane, be smart about it. Hire somebody. It's worth the money you pay. It's well worth it. That money has been paid back multiple times on cost savings because of the guidance and advice you gave me.
I appreciate that. And that's the goal. You know, you and I talked about this early on, and people will say, well, how will I know if you're worth your fee? And I'm like, you won't for another 2 or 3 years. You just flat out won't. I mean, I can walk you through and I can give you all the warm fuzzies you want to have, but at the end of the day, it's going to take 2 or 3 years before you figure that out. So, but that's the goal. So I'm glad it's worked out. Any advice for future aircraft owners?
Yeah. Don't let your desire to go to where you want to go get in the way of good decision making on weather. Because there's more people that lose their lives because of the desire to get there, and they don't pay attention to the weather. This flying is so much easier than it used to be, and it's more predictable in terms of weather than I think it's ever been before. And you know this from your airline days when you first started versus what you got now. And same thing here. What's available? I mean, what you used to do is have to call the weather guy and interpret what he's saying and try to understand what's happening. Now it's in front of you with your iPads and all the other things. Right. But the thing to do is do your homework. Do your homework. Don't just check the block and think it's there. Understand your environment, because to me, even though I have boots and electric props and windshields and all that, I believe the purpose of my anti-icing is to fly out of the icing. Don't stay in the icing. The idea is try to put in reasonable limits on your ability, because you'd be surprised what it can reach up and grab you when it doesn't need to. And so yeah, that's the big thing.
Yeah, that decision-making element is huge. It almost, you look at accident reports and just watch that kind of stuff. It almost always comes down to the gray matter between the ears, and guys are just, they'll buy these airplanes. They'll think that they can, I don't want to say they feel like they're invincible, but a lot of them are making decisions out there that certainly have that air to them. So,
yeah.
But
No,
well, hey, you know what? We could talk. This has been great. We could talk. I could ask you questions for the rest of the day, I think. But I promised you we would try to keep it between 30 and 40 minutes, and we're just a little bit over 40 minutes here. So, any other parting words before I close this out?
No, well, first to the audience, I apologize if I rambled on too long. My wife always accused me of thinking with my lips. The good news is as she says, everybody knows what you're thinking. The bad news is you'll say stuff sometimes that they don't want to hear. So I apologize for a little bit of that. But I wish everybody that's listening the best, and for whatever you're doing, if you're thinking about getting another airplane, again, think your way through, like what I just said about, I found a great experience with Chris Kirk, and you need to find your Chris Kirk or call him, because it'll change the way what you have on the flight line, and you're going to be proud of what you have, because he knows airplanes. And so anyways, I'm thankful. So thanks, Chris, for what you've done to improve the quality of life in our family.
Oh, that's great, Jim. I appreciate it. No, your talking here has been perfect. That's great. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your background and everything. And thanks to all the listeners out there. So you can check us out. We're at flywildblue.com, which incidentally, there's a picture on our website of Jim standing there the day you took delivery of the airplane. And then my ugly mug is right there next to you. So, and I was trying to remember, Jim, has that been 3 years or has it been 4 now?
I think we're this is the third annual, so it's been 4 years.
Holy smokes! My wife and I were just talking about that, Erica, because she was asking me who I was interviewing this morning, and I told her, and I said, remember we went out to barbecue at Q39, and I'm like, man, that just seems like all of a sudden it just seems like that's been a while ago. So
Incredible. I think it was right before COVID. Yeah.
Wow. But anyway, thanks again. So we're at flywildblue.com. Our phone number is 888-773-4249. And absolutely, please make sure if you're a listener of podcasts to pass ours on to others. We will also be posting this on YouTube. So if you want to see the video portion of it, you can go check out our YouTube channel, which is at flywildblue. Thanks again, Jim.
All good. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Be safe, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Blue Podcast. Have an idea for a future episode? We'd love to hear from you. Just drop us a line at planes, that's PLANES, at flywildblue.com. Our web address is www, that's in reverence to those of you who still use the www.flywildblue.com. If you have questions about buying or selling an airplane, we'd love to hear from you. And please remember to subscribe to the podcast and share it with others. Thanks so much for listening.